Welcome to the Heart of Business podcast, sponsored by International Facilitators Organization. I'm your host, Mo Fatalbab, and today our guest is Doretha Bailey, VP of Human Resources for Turfmaster Brands and mentor to women, military, and veterans. Doretha, welcome.
Thank you so much. So honored to be here.
Great to have you with us. So we first met at SHRM, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, about 3 years ago. It's gone quite quick.
Yeah, it has. And you just brought down the house with your incredible sharing and vulnerability, and it just really had a big impact on the entire program. So thank you. It was incredible.
Well, thank you. You really started that off with your vulnerability and sharing it in that moment. And I remember sitting at the table and we were all sharing, and the table volunteered me to go up and speak. And I did, and to be honest, I don't remember any bit of it as I went through it. But it has opened up a lot of doors, and just meaning from speaking and being able to help others. So it was a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a blessing to everybody there. So thank you. It truly was. I've done a lot of speaking, a lot of facilitation, a lot of emceeing of events, and really that event was truly one of the most moving to have. I don't know, it was 350 people in the room, and I think
Mhm.
most of them were in tears. Truly, I was incredibly blown away myself, and you seriously had an important part for that. So thank you once again. So let's talk about you a little bit, Doretha. So let's start with the beginning. Tell us how your career started.
Well, very interestingly, it started off by accident, we can say, or the divine order, however you want to place it. So I started off in the military. My initial job in the military was, chemical ordnance. I got pregnant with my oldest son and wasn't able to be around chemicals. So they put me in the orderly room, which is like your local HR department, right? So I did that for a while, and then got out, went back into it. Then 9/11 happened, and I was married at the time. And I was actually in Germany on active duty, and my ex-husband and I were determining one of us needed to get out, which one of it, and it ended up being myself. Um, and from then, I remember going to a temp agency, really trying to figure out, hey, I like this side of the house. What can I do from, chemical ordnance side of it? But I also like this other side. What is this called? And they said human resources. So I did a lot of my building on human resources, doing little temp jobs. And then the one that really changed my life, one of the areas that I temped in was Towers Parent at the time. And that's how I got into benefits. And so they had this really nice, rigorous program that in order for you to actually get into the call center side of it with their clients, is that you had to go through the training and you had to pass the test to be able to get through that. So my first civilian job was with a company called SAIC. And so I would literally drive from Virginia Beach to Arlington with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old
Every day.
at the time, every day,
That's
every
a that's
day.
a 4 hour drive.
Yes. So I did it. It was I was driven. I knew what I wanted to do at that time. Then, worked on making sure that I was working on a degree with that, focusing in those areas. That's actually when I got introduced to SHRM. I was looking at things. And so I became a SHRM member at that time. And then I just built my way up. Someone remembered hearing me speak at a summit that we've had when I worked for L3 Communications. And when we were doing a couple of mergers within the organization, said, actually, the senior VP called me and said, we want you on our team. But we want you to build the benefits department. So I took it on. I initially was not going to take it because I had just moved to Florida. And I was talking to my youngest son at the time, who was 8 years old. And he told me that women couldn't be, leaders.
Oh,
So I
your
remember I was
son.
like, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and take
Ouch.
it. So I
That's
went ahead and took it and was working out in Herndon, Virginia. So um, built it, had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but had a great time figuring it out. Then I realized I just didn't want to be boxed in. When I was really thinking about my career and where I wanted to go, I really wanted to be a journalist, and really understand every single thing. I have a love for business. So I did a lot of like just having conversations with, financial analysts or, the CFO, and just understanding the business side, how we were making money and how we moved on. So it just kept progressing to that, to where I'm at now. I've done some consulting work, which I love doing. And then I've also just been leading HR departments for the last 10 years.
Amazing, amazing. And then you're also doing mentoring. Tell us more
Yes.
about some of the mentoring work that you're doing.
So I've been doing mentoring for maybe 15 years when I think about it. So, as you're aware, I'm a military veteran. My father's a military veteran as well.
Mm.
And so I started off with Joint Forces in the DC area, mentoring just military veterans. And then when I moved out of DC and came to Atlanta, I kept doing that. And it's just giving back to the community that raised me. And then I ended up helping military spouses as well too, going through that. So really tapping into what I love. Then I worked with an executive coach just recently, and she heard some of my stories and some of the things that I've done for the mentees, that I'm still mentoring from that standpoint, and said I think you will be really great for Pathbuilders, which is helping women get to the next level. So I currently now am with Pathbuilders as well, helping women. I have three mentees under me, which is a really great experience going through it. So that's more of a formal side of it. So giving back is a big thing. I realize regardless, whatever I'm going through, I give back to people that, because I just didn't have that, that opportunity to really understand how to move forward, how to ask certain questions, how to really position myself for growth. So a lot of it's been trial and error. So I just wanted to help people have it a little bit easier than I did.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting because I know you and I have touched on this, but it's those hard things that make us who we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know what you can share with us as to what really has made you who you are.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately, to be honest, and it really goes back to my parents, right? Always telling me, you could be anything that you want to be. And so when I really think about, I've always called myself a fixer, but I'm also a disruptor when I
Mm,
think about it. And so as when I moved to the States, I was 16 years old when I moved from the States. I grew up overseas, Germany and Japan, and England as well. So when I came to the States, being um, just new to the whole experience, it was eye-opening. And I remember that the school decided, well, it was actually the whole county, right, that we weren't going to celebrate MLK Day. We weren't taking that day off. And so some of us in the lunchroom were having a conversation about it. And my whole thing around it is, well, why don't we just go and have a conversation with the principal? And so myself and, another person went and had a conversation with the principal. And his response was that we could do a presentation where we can put something together, but it couldn't be during the school hours. It would have to be voluntary. And then not only that, that we were going to also celebrate Robert E. Lee. At the time, I didn't know who Robert E. Lee was. And I remember I went home to my parents. My parents were extremely upset. And so they had the conversation. I'm like, regardless, I'm still going to do it. And so we did. And we put on this presentation. The librarian, who was not supposed to help us because no one from the faculty was able to help, but she snuck and helped, right? And she gave that to us. And so being able to use the voice and do something, that was one of my, my pillars. But I really give that to how my parents raised me. And just raised us, because I have siblings, I'm the oldest of three. So that had helped. And then some other things that I have done. But it's gotten to the point of, I used to be free with my voice and be able to sit there and have a couple of conversations, from there. And then I got to a point in my life, actually in Northern Virginia, where I just silenced my voice.
mm,
But I would tussle inside because that just wasn't who I was, but I thought this is what the world wanted me to be and following that chain of command type of thing. But I wasn't being authentically myself. So I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And so now I'm really big about, my voice and being able to say something. And, I'm okay with being different. I'm definitely a visionary, but I'm also able to execute. And it took me years to get there. And when we were actually at the visionary conference where you and I had, the conversation, that stuff came out, I was in a hard place at that time. I was really trying to figure out which direction to sit there and go.
Mm.
And things just started happening. And I haven't been quiet since.
I love that. I love that. I love that. So what things are you advocating for and why do they matter to you?
Oh, nice one. So one, we'll hit on the veterans, right? So a lot of the veterans that I mentor are all mid to senior level.
Mm.
And so with them, it's the fact that they're just not monolithic. And, trying to get employers to understand the credentials and the expertise that military veterans bring is way different. And then not only that, trying to give them a better experience. There has been some, awful experiences from what I've, actually just heard from the veterans themselves and my own. You do hear a lot that companies are pro veterans, this and that, but they're more on about the body and not the brain, right? We want you to go ahead and produce the work from a labor perspective, but we really don't want you to be the leaders in our organization.
Mm.
And so it's really educating that and moving forward on that side of it. And then not only that, you have, I'm not going to call them the voiceless because everybody has a voice, but those in organizations that feel that they're quiet, right? Where um, you hear a lot of about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And when you really go into it, it goes to, is it really the imposter syndrome or the imposter treatment? Right. And you really kind of go into it. And when you really break it down, when you talk about imposter syndrome, it's a psychological thing of doubt, right? Where it comes in and it moves forward. But when you really think about it, that doubt stemmed from somewhere. That doubt came from somebody telling you that you couldn't do something, or somebody made you feel that you weren't, belonging, or whatever that may be, that's tied to it. And so diagnosing it for exactly what it is and getting to that root cause helps you really quiet that inner critic. So I've been really advocating for that piece as well too.
Yeah. And that's a lot of work for anyone to do for themselves, let alone
Yes.
to help other people with doing that
Hmm.
work, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a continual thing that you got to sit there and work on. We all have our doubts, and they stem from an array of different things, and, one of my things, and I've said it before, is like when I grew up, in my household, and it was on my father's side of it, but if you didn't have anything smart at all to say, you don't say anything.
Mm.
And, but I found out that that was a generational thing that was said in his family. And my father was really big with education and, just history and knowing everything. So when I would get into rooms, I would be extremely quiet because I didn't think I had anything intelligent to say. Um, and then I will hear somebody say something that I was thinking about. And it's like, oh, probably should have said something. So when I'm talking to people, it's you're in that room for a reason, and not to sit there and compare yourself to others, and just speak up, and if you don't feel that you're ready, then just educate yourself to get to a point that you feel comfortable. But you got to understand why you are the way you are so you can overachieve that, and then again, it goes back to that inner critic where you can silence that inner critic.
Yeah. So when you think about your work
Mhm.
as VP of Human Resources, what comes to mind in terms of what you're most proud of, what you feel like you've really done to impact your teammates at Turfmaster?
People first. That is one of the biggest philosophies, that we have, and actually not just talking about it, but actually living it out. So one of the great things is when, I came to the organization, my responsibility was to build its first HR department. And so it was our goal is we want to hit 250, million in 5 years, then we want to hit 500 million. So knowing what the overarching goal is, and well, not only that, we want to be the number one lawn care in North America. And so it was what are we going to need to be able to move to those areas, but also bring people along with us. And so when understanding the industry, one of the things I did was I actually did the work and went out and did ride-alongs with the technicians. I'm spraying lawns and I'm actually applying it and having conversations, and people didn't even know who I was. And then when they found out who I was, it was just like, wow, right? So getting the respect of people at all levels of the organization was the biggest thing. So when I was able to sit there and implement a couple of things, for example, one of the things I'm proud of, and I actually heard one part of it at the annual conference that we went to, was neonatal leave. And so it made me start really thinking about the different type of people in our organizations, that they're in different parts of their career. So one of the things was that we have a non-gender type of, maternity leave when we really think about it, or parental leave. So we have the normal leave that's there between 10 days that's paid, right? So that's where the adoption, that's regular birth, and, everything's fine there. Then we have neonatal that's covered up to 12 weeks, that's paid. Then we have pregnancy loss. And depending on whatever the stage of that pregnancy loss is the duration of that. And we have grandparent leave. So and all of those are paid. And so I went on a ride along, and we had an employee that thought that they had the old paternity leave of the 5 days. And so what he did was he worked 3 days, and I just happened to be there, and he was saving the two. His wife was in the hospital and his newborn was in the hospital, and also had a 2-year-old at home. And he was just working really fast. And I said, well, do you know we have the neonatal leave? And, the response was no. So I rode up to him and I told him, I introduced who I was, because typically I don't do that. And, I said, this is who I am. And did you know that we have a neonatal leave that pays up to 12 weeks? He just started crying right there. And that was one of those moments of, this is why we do it, right? And so what that does too is when you do certain things like that, then people understand that you actually care, right? And then they're not just a body. And then that also helps with retention. So trying to do that and working on collaborations and building everything that we need, that's one of my biggest things that I'm actually really proud of, is that we're taking care of people that take care of us, right? And that take care of our customers. So it's the little things, but it's also the big things. So that's my proudest moment
Oh,
thus far.
I love that. What a great story. You brought tears to my eyes. I took 6 weeks off when our kid was born, and gosh, that was not enough. Isn't that something? Yeah.
It is, and one of the things is you should never have to worry about taking care of your kid or your child in work. And I remember just feeling that way. And you're just like, my child is sick. Well, hold on, hurry up and take this real quick so I can get the fever down so daycare doesn't call me so I could be out and do all of that. And no one should ever have to feel that way. Because again, life just happens. And when you take care of people, it goes a long way. And sometimes too, it's, yes, there's PTO leave and there's all this other stuff that you have, but there's nothing wrong with being a human. If you got somebody that's coming into the office, they can't be 100% if they got certain issues going on at home. Why not say, go ahead and just go handle this situation? I had an employee that his wife had a miscarriage at 6 months. And my thing is just go ahead and go handle that. But if I also had a conversation of, I know what it is to have a miscarriage because I've had one. But I don't know from a male perspective on how that is, because I know that you're the protector. I know that you're trying to make sure everything's okay with the family. how are you? Right? What resources do you need? And it was one of those things of, let me make sure you're okay because I know you have this responsibility. And the saddest part is when he had to, they were going to ship the baby to where the baby was going to be buried from Georgia to Tennessee. And he's like, I can't do it. So they drove in their vehicle with the baby there in the vehicle driving to Tennessee. And I just,
Yeah.
I couldn't fathom that, right? And but imagine what type of mindset he was in. There's no way that he would be able to do his job 100% with this weighing on him. So he didn't take leave. We didn't do any of this other stuff. It was go handle what you need to handle, right? So it's the human aspect of it. And I mean, he thanked me. He's like, I've never had that before. And I was like, you know what? You're valued, right? So that's what we're talking about is the people first. Yes, we know we got jobs that we need to do, but if you got the right people in the place, they can pick up the slack when somebody's not there.
Yeah.
Right. And then sometimes you as a leader need to just pick up the slack and just handle it, right? It's because again, there's certain things that we can't help. Either it's an elderly parent or it's a child going through something, or if you yourself is going through something, I shared with you before, and I shared with a lot of people in that room,
Mm.
um, of the fact of when I went through my trauma
Yeah.
and not being seen. And that was the most loneliest thing ever in the world is I can't walk. I'm bent over, I'm on the wall, and then, but no one said, "Are you okay?"
Mm.
And I wasn't. And it was, I mean, it was a traumatic experience for me, to sit there and go through. But just saying, "Are you okay?" or "I see you," that's it. Because I really shouldn't have driven myself, and I actually went to urgent care. I really shouldn't have driven myself there. Um, the ambulance should have came and got me.
Yeah.
And so because even when I went to urgent care, they immediately had me in an ambulance and going off to the emergency room, but I was not okay. And the interesting thing is here I am fighting for my life, trying to breathe, and the leader at that time called and asked me about work. I can't breathe,
Oh my
right?
God.
But you're asking me about work. So it put things in perspective. And so that's where I'm at of I think sometimes we gotta be our own testimonies on certain things, of how we treat people. And because I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. I don't care what type of business is it, it is, if it's from an acquisition, I want it to be something with dignity, right? Is because of the fact that somebody's losing something. I've been on both sides of it. But if you're coming from a side of empathy, then people see it. It's easier, from a communication standpoint. So it's just one of those things of sometimes we don't understand why we go through what we need to, and then something happens and it'd be like, that's why I went through what I did. So you can be a voice for somebody else and be able to help them.
Yeah. Um, as always, you are just inspiring and incredibly thoughtful and vulnerable and open. What's next? There's a fire in that belly of yours. I feel it. What's next for Doretha? What's next?
There is finally, publishing that book that, I was telling you about. So I have a hard deadline at the end of the year to go ahead and complete that. I'm actually right now restocking my products that I have for giving, veterans, for homeless veterans, care packages and self-care packages. So really excited about that. And then helping people grow. That's what's next for me right now as we're going through it. But I will say, you said a couple of things to me that have been very profound that just have not left. And one of them was, I remember exactly where we were. We were standing in the expo at the annual conference, and we talked for hours.
Mm.
And I told you I was an introvert, and you was like, okay, are you introvert or are you shy? And I remember just staring at you, looking at you, and it was just like, oh, that's a good question.
Mm.
So it's one of those things of I take that in. You brought in another question to me, which I'm not going to say on this podcast. I'll say it out there, but I have been thinking about that second question that you had. I'm not going to you've put right in my face from a mentor standpoint. And it has been the most profound thing ever. And um, you're one of the most empathetic and humble people I just have ever met. And I shared a little bit with you at the last conference that I was really, really surprised. But I hear you in my head, and I value you. That's the reason why I check on you. Just I don't want anything, just to see if you're okay. How are you doing? How's your family doing?
You've been great.
So I just want to say thank you for being you, and thank you for your wonderful voice and everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. But before I say goodbye, can you tell
Mhm.
us a bit about the book? Can you give us a sneak peek?
Yes, yeah. So expect what you accept. So it's literally about phrases and that, is an inspiration leadership book that gets you there. There's some certain phrases that have been told to me that changed my life, some personal. Actually, they're all personal when you really think about it, but
Mhm.
but it's one of the things of which way do you go through it, right? So, for example, and I'll just um, give an example on the expect what you accept type of thing. Um, if you're in a bad relationship and you know it's a bad relationship, you've always accepted it for years, right? So why are you expecting something different? And so it's one of those things of a mindset if you're thinking about whatever that's going to be. And from a personal standpoint, one of the trajectories that it was my first betrayal, to be 100% honest, is, I grew up as a daddy's girl. Everything around me was about my father. I wanted to be like him and, all this other stuff that's where my love of business comes from, is from my father, and helping people is from him.
Mm.
And um, my ex-husband at the time, when he asked for a divorce, he said, "Your father told me to divorce you." And I was like, "There's no way." Right. And so when I was fighting for my life, as I was telling you, I finally brought it up to my dad, and he said I did. And I was
Mm.
at a dark place in my life. And it was the biggest betrayal. And it had me thinking about a couple of things, is because my father always told me I can do whatever I wanted to. And, it was just a lot of that stuff was there. But that's when my voice became silent,
Mm.
is because if the person next to me that I grew up with thinks about me in this way, then how am I going to be able to sit there and be the best leader that I can be? And so I stayed in the shadows for a while because of that. And he apologized, um, but it was something that did change my life. Um, and it's one of those things of, do you stay there or you don't stay there? And so if I stay there, then I'm going to accept being mediocre versus accepting that I'm not. Right. And so, and it's just like certain things that goes in there, and there's some career things that's tied to it. Um, but we all go through ups, downs, the peaks and valleys of life. And so I've been writing this book since 2018.
Mm.
There's parts I've been going up and down, and then it got to a point of I need to just go ahead and do it,
Yeah.
right? And my voice is important and no longer needs to be silent.
Your voice is important. And absolutely, absolutely everybody needs to hear your voice. You're inspirational. And, there's a moment we talk about this concept of victimhood. And, there's this
Mhm.
concept of the drama triangle. And we talk about, the moment you're in an accident, God forbid, yeah, of course you're a victim. But
Mhm.
will you live that way for the rest of your life? Or will you say, nope, time to take charge? I can't always be a
That's it.
victim, right? And that's what
Yeah,
you did.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I thank you for that. It was so funny as I was I had dinner with Derek from Life Guides. And as we were sitting there, I said, I don't want to be known for what I said, right? And just for the viewers, one of the things I mentioned is that I was raped in the military.
Mm,
And I was working in corporate at the time as well, too. And so I shared that with a couple of other things of HR really not being seen when things take place. And so I talked about COVID and, everything that's associated with that. And so as I'm sitting there with Derek, I didn't want to be known for the person that talked about rape.
mm.
Um, and he looked at me and he said, "What's wrong with that?" Right. And his thing is, you're not a victim, pretty much. And um, it gave me power, to be 100% honest. And um, I said, okay, to the point that I told my CEO, I said, there are times that I'm not okay. Um, oof, try not to cry on this one, but so I said, it happened around my birthday. And I said, I just need you to know that if I'm telling you that I'm not okay, I need to kind of just go home, right? And do whatever it is, or I'm not coming in, or whatever it was. I would have never done that if it wasn't me saying it out loud and taking back my power. And I'm okay with saying I'm not okay today, and I'm okay with being, happy and all this other good stuff. But what I realize is when I'm going through those trauma, type of feelings or thoughts, I instantly go out to help people. I don't know what that is or whatever it is, but that's my way of coping with it. Um, and it was something, but it doesn't define me. And it took me, it was okay. As if I go through that, it's because I thought it would be like a negative connotation on me, right? It's just like, okay, now that's a stigma that's tied to me like the scarlet letter. And it's just not, and I'm okay with it from sharing that piece of the story. And I've shared it with my team. And my team understands and gets it. And the reason why I shared it with my team is when I was working for someone at a different organization on my birthday, they knew I love Hello Kitty. And so just one of the things. So they decorated my whole office with Hello Kitty. And it was absolutely gorgeous. And, I was really excited about it, but I took everything down. And I made them feel that I didn't like it. And it wasn't that, I just wasn't celebrating my birthday at that time. So now it's one of those things that I celebrate my birthday. Um, and I'm intentional about it, and how I'm doing it and making sure I'm in a good, headspace as I go through. But um, I don't want anybody to feel that I'm not appreciative of what they've done because I went in shutdown mode. So, and that's what I've done. And it's been really beautiful, to be honest, where
Yeah.
you can sit there and say, I'm not in the best mode right now, right? As I'm getting in there. Um, but I will bounce back. And I mean, I don't stay there long, which is a beautiful thing. Um, but when you allow people to see just that little piece of you, you don't have to go into a long, discussion or whatever it is, but it gives people a little bit of understanding of who you are versus, oh, she's standoffish or she's closed off or, whatever that may be, or she's rude, right? So it's one of those just like, no, I'm not having a good day today, or, things are great. But um, I think
How-
that's when we talk about being authentic, what that looks like a little bit.
Yeah. So look, first of all, thank you for sharing what you shared with us and for your just incredible openness and vulnerability. Second of all, thank you for the incredible example you're setting for just the notion that doesn't have power over me anymore.
Mhm.
Once I've let it out, it doesn't have power over me anymore. I love that. And then I want to just ask, how did your team respond? How did your team respond when you shared something so difficult with them?
I got tears. from everyone.
Yeah.
And, so it was interesting is because every single one of them said, we thought you were strong, right? And not in a negative way,
Yeah.
but it was a positive way of seeing that. And it allowed them to be vulnerable. And the fact that, I actually care about them. Um, and um, I earned more of their respect, because I've done that. And one of the things I will say that has been really great about the whole thing is a lot of them, actually all of them have excelled. And um, a lot of them are just like, wherever you go, I would love to work for you type of thing. And um, when people feel seen, it goes a long way. And so it's been rewarding on that side is the fact that I see them as human beings and I don't see them as machines. But I started off with myself, right? And allowing them to see me and that I don't have all the answers, but we'll figure it out together, you know? So that's been really, really good.
Well, listen, that is a leadership lesson for the ages. And Doretha, you are incredible as always. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart for joining us and just for being a part of my life because you have certainly enriched it very much. So thank you again. You could follow the Heart of Business podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also, podcast reviews have a real impact on a podcast's visibility. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review to help others find the show. Finally, you could find all our episodes at internationalfacilitatorsorganization.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.